welcome to another episode of Cocktail Classified. I am here today with my friend Andrew. Welcome, Andrew.
Hello.
So, who are you? Tell us who you are. I know we know you, but for our listeners, who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Andrew, known as Andrew, no Andes or any shortening of the name.
Yeah.
Based here out of Houston, and I'm the owner and founder of Cut Above Zero Proof Spirits.
Yeah. You're Houston born and raised, right?
Houston born and raised, yeah. Love H-Town.
Awesome. So you own Cut Above, but what did you do kind of before Cut Above?
So before Cut Above, I spent 19 years in banking.
Yeah.
So I worked at a large national global bank.
Mm-hmm.
But when I wasn't working, I enjoyed all things cocktail culture.
Yeah.
So going out to bars, meeting bartenders, the mixology side of it, something I was always fascinated with.
Yeah. When did you start getting into cocktail culture?
You know,
when did you say in that era?
Yeah, I was never really like a beer guy where I would just, want to go to as many breweries as I could. When I traveled, I would always want to go to bars.
Yeah.
There was something I didn't know what it was like then. I think I kind of know what it is now, but I was just always attracted to the craft of bartending. I, on the side, also painted for a while. So as an artist, like using the energy of my hands and expelling it to create something, as I've always been able to relate to other people that do that. And to me, that's what I saw in bartending. And then, of course, I loved a good drink and how they came up with the flavors and the beauty of the presentation. And so I think right after sort of college, I started to begin to appreciate it more and seek it out no matter, where I was in the world.
Yeah, for sure. Was there any what was your first cocktail experience? Like, this is cool.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
The first, I think, memorable cocktail experience, and this is when I moved back to Houston, so about 2 years out of college. So again, had visited places before that. It was my first visit to Captain Foxheart Bad News Bear here in town, the legendary place. There were some cocktails there that I was like, how? And one, I didn't understand half the ingredients, and two, just the flavors and the presentation, and of course the whole vibe of the place, and most importantly, the people there.
Yeah.
That was a place where I was like, okay, I'm going to come back here a lot. Yes, of course, for the drinks, but I just like being in the room. Maybe that's the hospitality component of it.
Yeah.
And so I just have like really good memories moving back to Houston out of college and really saying, okay, this is cool. And then of course, we also had Anvil closer to where I was in Montrose, and they were doing a lot of forward things, getting a lot of that, attention outside of the state. So I think having those two really come to prominence in my eyes.
Yeah.
When I was moving back here and kind of into the culture, feels like a really just lucky place and time to be, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you named two of the Houston institutions at this point.
Yeah.
You got Anvil, and then Bad News Bar is still my favorite bar in Houston. I love going out there still.
It is.
Yeah.
I feel like it's popular enough, but not too popular, where like I always have this worry it's going to get ruined one day. Too many people are going to know about it.
Yeah.
And it hasn't yet for all these years that Justin's been running them.
Yeah. I think Justin does a good job of controlling the flow and what the expectation of his bar program is.
Yeah. I think so, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
So you started in baking, got into cocktails.
Right.
What triggered you to go into the entrepreneurial route and start your foray into Cut Above and the NA Spirits category?
Yeah, it's a question I get asked a lot, and I always say kind of there's two. I'm going to give you two answers to it.
Yep.
So after getting into cocktail culture, staying in that for a while, traveling, finding a love for experiencing great hospitality, both food and drink. I got to a point where I was turning 40 years old, and this was kind of right at the beginning of the pandemic. And anyone who's turned 40, like the body just starts to slow down a little bit. You pay a little bit of a heavier price for having too many cocktails on any given night. I also was the father of 2 young children. And so I had this thought, and I'm a big believer in what I call like the win of the thought. And what I mean by that is that thought was, all right, how can I be out and still be social and enjoy this time with my friends? Because it's less now, right? Because I've got family commitments. Still have a great drink in my hand, but not have to sacrifice not having a drink in order to feel good the next day.
Yep.
Like I was tired of making that trade-off. And so, had that thought and mentioned it to a couple of people, here and there when we would have people over at the house. And I always say, I think my phone was listening because I get an ad on Instagram the next day after having these conversations. And that ad is for a non-alcoholic whiskey.
Mhm.
And this is when I was really into whiskeys at the time. And I was like, okay, well, shit, amazing. I didn't know this
Mhm.
existed. Very cool. Let me order this to my house. So I order this bottle to my house, make an old fashioned because I was really into old fashions then. And it didn't live up to what it said it was going to be.
Yep.
Got a couple things right, but got more things wrong.
Mm.
And so I had tried some other, like I said, okay, this is a category. Let me order everything I could find.
Yeah.
Kept making drinks with it. And none of them for me really sometimes made a drink I even wanted to finish. And none of them really made a drink I wanted to have a second one of.
Okay.
And so, I was like kind of bummed about that. We're like, okay, like this is really cool. This is a product that could speak to me
Mm.
where I was at in my life, but didn't hit the mark.
Mm.
And so, Blanca, who's my wife, who
Mhm.
she's the co-founder of Cut Above.
Yeah.
We talked and said, what if we came and approached this category that
Yeah.
again, neither of us have hospitality or beverage background, but we had a thought that there wasn't any brand that was really talking to me at the time. I wasn't someone who was looking to abstain. I wanted to kind of have my cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Right? I wanted to be out. I wanted to experience hospitality, but I wanted to be in control of the ethanol, the alcohol
Mm.
part of the drink. And brands at that time almost really seemed anti-alcohol,
Mhm.
and I guess just wasn't a message that felt inviting
Yeah.
to a lot of people. And so we talked about it and said, let's give it a go.
Mm.
And so we started development, which took about a year and a half to
Okay.
almost 2 years
Mhm.
to get our 4 expressions across the finish line. Really approaching it from a place that said, we want what we build to be based on inclusivity,
Mm.
right? And for us, that meant what we built had to absolutely work to make a completely alcohol-free cocktail, for our friends and family and strangers out there who that's
Yeah.
what they wanted. But it also had to be used to make what we now call a cut cocktail or just a low proof cocktail as well. So it had to work with the traditional spirits that I
Yeah.
still know and love. I still consume alcohol, which
Yeah.
every time I say that, some people are like, what? You own a non-alcoholic spirit company?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you can do both.
Yeah.
Um, and so it had to do both of those things because for me, that had the most chairs at the table so that everyone could have what they want. It's foolproof, it's a low proof, it's a zero proof,
Yeah.
but we're all enjoying something that's well crafted. Back to that thing I enjoyed out of college was the craft of it.
Mm.
It Everyone got to enjoy that, whether you were not drinking for the month, for your life, or just had the question that day and wanted to see what it was about.
Yeah.
Like that's what I wanted Cut Above to be those early days.
Awesome. Okay. That's a great story. I'm happy
Yeah,
I
yeah.
started into.
The
Mhm.
the second half that I alluded
Mm.
to is so it's kind of the personal side of the story. So my son, who's my oldest, was at an age where he would start to ask at dinner table, like, "Dad, what do you do for a living? Like, tell me about it." And I had taken him to my office downtown a couple of
Okay.
times, but he wanted to know, what's the work? Like, what do you actually
Yeah.
do? And I would notice I would deflect the question. I really wouldn't answer it, and I definitely wasn't enthusiastic about what I did. And I kind of describe it as this kind of weight of a father where I could see this look. He was like I had disappointed him.
Sure.
And for me, that was really, really heavy weight. Like I almost felt like a physical weight on my
Mhm.
shoulders. And it was a really big part of the motivation for Cut Above because I wanted to set an example for him of what it looked like to try to leave your mark on the world or in
Yeah.
just your small area in a way that helped others and that showed you can believe in yourself and you can place resources behind that belief in yourself to create something.
Yeah.
And so that kind of personal motivation was there at the same time as also me wanting to figure out a way for me to be social with others and have cocktails with or without alcohol with everybody. Those kind of hit right at the same time.
Yeah.
And I say now it's really great. My children know way too much cocktail terminology than they
Mhm.
should for their
Yeah. That's
age.
funny. Okay.
They're
Yeah.
great brand
Yeah.
ambassadors. Whenever we go to a restaurant, they're like, "Do you have Cut Above here?" And if
Yeah.
they don't, well, Cut Above is, and they just they spew it. It's amazing. I love it. But
Yeah.
now I can see, and we're very open.
Mm.
A tradition we do at our dinner table that my wife give her all the credit for. We call it parte de dia,
Mm.
the part of your day,
Mm.
and we go around the four of us, and you share a part of your day that was a good part or a bad part, like
Yeah.
whatever you want to say, and everybody takes their turn and does it.
Yeah.
And still to this day, but particularly those early days when we were building Cut Above, there were hard days where we wanted to get a distribution agreement and we didn't get it,
Mhm.
or formula's taking too long to finish. And so I would share those just as much as I share the wins, the things we got
Yeah.
right, or the successes that we had, or the recognition. And so for me, that was really important to not just show him, hey, yes, it does matter what you spend a lot of your time doing,
Yeah.
and you should try to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
Um, but also it's challenging. And then we as a family should be able to talk about those and share.
Yeah.
So kind of creating that for me, which was an example that I didn't have for them to what this looked like. You know, tomorrow should all things like shut down. I feel proud that I was able to demonstrate that them. So whether or not they choose entrepreneurship or
Yeah.
not, they at least got to see, how I approached it and
Yeah.
like the meaningfulness and great thing about entrepreneurship.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you have a little family business.
Yeah,
Sounds like everybody's
yeah.
involved in one way or another.
They do. They
Yeah.
do ask
Yeah.
every now and then. So
Yeah.
what happens when you
Yeah.
die? Who gets cut above?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, hopefully we're a long way away from.
Yeah, for sure. So you talk about, I know it's your husband and wife team.
Mhm.
How is it working together on a project like this?
Yeah.
Something we haven't had on the show before yet. So
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
curious to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's amazing,
Yeah.
and it's challenging. So for us, we of course always had our professional careers, and then you have conversations about that, what's going on in each other's lives, and then we've always had what's going on with kids, and then what's going on with us as the husband wife.
Yeah.
And so having all of those, kind of separate conversations at the right times in a relationship. Well, now there's another one, which is okay. Now is the business thing,
Yeah.
and of course it's stressful as resources that she's earned and saved, that I've earned and saved.
Yeah.
All those resources, are into this project now, and after 2 years, it became my full time job.
Yeah.
And so it required us to really strengthen our communication skills, to really make sure we were transparent and shared how like we feel about things. Blanca is great about holding me accountable.
Mhm.
Like I'm very much more the dreamer and how things can get really big. And I've got an operations background as well, so I can understand the steps to get to some place. But the discipline required to grow at the appropriate pace. So she definitely does that. And for those who know Blanca, she's a natural born salesperson,
Mhm.
and so having her come in and bring her strengths, she feeds our sales pipeline.
Yeah.
And she, does that amongst other things. And so seeing her bring that to the table, I'm bringing my strengths to the table. It without either one of us, I don't think it necessarily works. And she still has her full time job, and she raises the kids predominantly and takes them and makes sure they're in the summer camps and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I give her all the credit for that. But it is really neat to do another thing together, right? We were raising kids together, running a business together. It's an experience that is definitely hard, and I don't want to have it come across as it's happy and go lucky all the time. It's not. It's a stressor.
Yeah.
But when you get those good days where we get the win and this thing that we wanted to build, we see someone appreciate it. And it's not like okay, they appreciate it and like we're getting that for them, but to see that, I didn't think I was going to ever have another gin and tonic because I've been sober for 25 years and that was my favorite cocktail. And now I get to have another gin and tonic. This is amazing. Like it's a good feeling giving someone joy, giving them happiness.
Yeah.
In a small little way, right?
Yeah.
Kind of compared, but in that small little way, like that's a really cool feeling. And that's, I think, motivating for the both of us.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. So we talked a little about your background, how it's husband wife team. Let's talk a little bit more, kind of roll back to Cut Above now.
Okay.
So you talk about you have 4 formulations, right? So you have a gin, the agave, the mezcal, and the whiskey.
That's right.
Right. Which one came first? Or did they all come at the same time?
So gin was first across the finish line, right? So in most gins, there's no wood involved. So it's really kind of the flavors are all organic, but they don't have to play with wood, and wood is complex and does different things. And so behind that came the agave blanco tequila, and then mezcal, and then whiskey was last.
Okay.
Whiskey is definitely the most complex out of all of them. Like a lot of whiskeys are.
Yeah.
But there was definitely an order to them. Mm-hmm.
Did you come in? When did you guys hit the market? Because I know we started seeing NAs right before we opened Night Shift. They started becoming like this big push. Like 2018, 2019. Was that was like the era of push.
That was when you started to see them hit the market, get some traction, and we launched officially late 2022.
Okay.
So we're in our 4th year at the moment.
Okay.
And then when we launched, I don't know the exact number, but we were probably the 9th, maybe 10th brand in the US.
Okay.
You had some 2 or 3 kind of really, really big ones, and then kind of us as the kind of second wave. We were part of that second wave of brands that were coming on the market.
So you kind of entered right at that kind of entry point of everybody else.
Yeah, like we knew it was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think early on everyone was still like, all right, it's a thing. For how long?
Yeah.
Right. We know now it's for forever. It's here to stay.
Yeah.
But when we joined, we had some brands that had done that market validation for us from a business perspective.
Yeah.
And for us, it was just okay. Well, let's make the best product out there. Like that's the goal, right? We want to achieve all these things, but bottom line in any beverage, you just have to be able to make a good drink with it. And so that's really what was kind of I had that kind of written out actually, just, has to make a good drink.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's a lot of NAs out there that are flat. I guess is the best way to put them. And they kind of get muted in a cocktail. And then I think Cut Above holds up pretty well because we've used it in a lot of our programming that we've done with the company.
It was important that it did that. And I can take you to when we were doing the development of it. So what happened during all those year and a half, 2 years. So I brought in a hospitality veteran who came in 25 years in the business globally, ran bars, ran competitions, developed cocktails, and said, okay, I definitely know this is going to be a at-home consumed product. And think of this as during COVID, right? So everybody was at home. So it had to fit there.
Yeah.
But I really wanted it to fit, what we call on trade in the bars and restaurants, because again, that was where I wanted to be. And so that's where I wanted this to be. I wanted people to feel welcome when they were there, when they weren't drinking. Yeah. And so we would, let's take the gin, for example. We'd do some development and we'd get 3 versions of it per round. And we would taste it neat, room temperature, taste it chilled, write our notes, smell it. We'd make a gin and tonic using just those 3 Cut Above versions. Yeah. We take a best-selling foolproof gin. We do that cut cocktail. So half that, half Cut Above, gin and tonics. Yeah. Do that. And then we take just that foolproof gin and make gin and tonics. So we'd have 9 gin and tonics sitting in front of us at a time. Yeah. And then we taste them. Okay, how does it perform in all of those? Then we let the ice melt. All right, is it still showing up? Ingredients hold together. What are the differences between the two? Is it what we expected? Yeah. We did that hundreds and hundreds of times. So it's thousands of iterations across those 4 expressions. Yeah. I'm so glad we took the time to do that. It was really important that Cut Above never felt as this is a fad and we're doing another brand on the market. We set out from the beginning with the intention to make something that held up and performed in cocktails. Like that was really, really important to me. It still is really important to me. And I think to your point, there was a lot of products on the market that didn't. And I don't think it had the rigor. And they got the advantage of being to the market first, right? Because of that. Yeah. But I think we have the advantage now because we took the time to do that. And it's appreciated from, big restaurants to craft cocktail bars to at-home bartenders that it's going to work in a drink. Yeah.
So what was your creative process on kind of designing it? So were you like, whatever you can talk about. So like, were the individual infusions of flavors that you're blending together? Is it a big kind of like pot, like you throw everything together and just kind of work with it? Like, what is the process for creating your spirit?
The way I say to sort of visualize it is like kind of the switchboard, right? With all these little toggle switches, and each one is tied to a particular flavor or ingredient. And some of those are extracts, some of them are esters, ethers, all the different kind of chemistry terms you can use for food and drink creation. And some of them are the flavors that you get when oak and ethanol meet. And it's American oak, and it was previously used for something. So we're able to kind of isolate all of these different flavors. Everything is natural, like that's in Cut Above. And then we just start flipping a combination of them and see what happens. And that's what we would taste in each round. Yeah. And then we would talk about what worked and didn't, and really kind of delve into well, this thing really isn't traditionally found for example, in a mezcal. We have a seaweed extract, which you're not going to find in traditionally made mezcals. Okay. But it helped create this kind of umami fusel note that is common to mezcals. Mm-hmm. And so for us, we said, okay, well, is what we're building trying to be exactly true to the creation of a tequila, or is what we're building something that's going to bring those flavors to a tequila cocktail? Okay. And that was our choice, to perform in the cocktail. And so, yeah, it was just playing with all these switches and the aromas and then tasting it. And then when we had it sort of locked in, that became what we now use to produce and do our different production runs.
So how many flavors do you think you kind of just have tasted or gone
Oh
through?
my goodness. So many.
Iterations.
Yeah.
There's probably
I mean, there's
too.
been thousands of botanicals and woods and flowers and roots and barks that we went through to land where we're at. Yeah, it was a lot. And I'll say one of the tricky ones, and some of the brands, we noticed it before we launched. And it's the hardest part. You can see me doing it here, right? Quotes. I'm going to bring my air quotes here. The burn of alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was one of those things, all non-alcoholic spirit brands primarily use capsaicin, right, which is a chemical in chilies and peppers. And I always said, right, it's the burn of a shot of tequila is different than the burn of a bite of a jalapeno.
Yeah. And
so you can't say one is the other. And so we wanted to not have that. It was something we found unpleasant about some of the products on the market, most of the products on the market. And so a lot of that development time, once we got the flavors right, was creating that mouthfeel and sensation. And so I think you could tell sometimes when you taste something non-alcoholic and you can taste, okay, all they cared about was getting a flavor right. Okay. They didn't care about viscosity. They didn't care about mouthfeel. They didn't care about how those flavors develop on the palate. They didn't care about the sensation once you swallow. They didn't care about once ice melts. They didn't care about how would it work, carbonated. Like those are the things we cared about out of the get-go. And so for us, paying attention to all those at the beginning definitely made it more challenging. But again, like I said earlier, the reward is that we know it performs. We know that it works in drinks. And that unpleasant peppercorn spiciness that was there, like we found other ways to naturally offset it. So it's more warmth on a swallow, which is like kind of what that sensation is. Yeah. And it's a smaller bite. It's not peppery like peppercorn, because peppercorn doesn't belong in every cocktail, right?
Every time I've tasted cut above, it's always on the back palate. Mm-hmm. It's not like right there, like you're getting punched because you just ate a chili pepper.
That's right. That's right. And that's one of the things, like when I talk a lot about with consumers, the difference, especially with tastings. Someone who's new to non-alcoholic spirits, I would say that one of the main key differences, and I always particularly talk about it with the whiskey, is when you have a traditional foolproof whiskey, you've got to, right, so it hits the palate, that ethanol's got to start to burn off. It's got to then bring the flavors. So you got to kind of have to fight through it to get to the flavors, and then those flavors unfold as you're tasting it in your palate. And then once you swallow, right, it's still doing things.
Yeah.
And so on the non-alc side, because that ethanol is not there and thus chemical properties aren't there, flavors really come up front. And they all kind of arrive at the doorstep at the same time. And then because of the viscosity that we have in ours, they do change as you swallow. And once you swallow, the different things appear. But it's a different sensation when you're doing that neat taste, because you're like, oh, this is immediate. Like they're all here. I get it. And it's a lot. And let me figure out what I'm tasting. And so you got to do a couple of sips. It's similar to like what you do with wines and with spirits, like multiple sips to figure out what's going on there. But the main difference is that you're getting them all up front, and you've got to kind of parse out, okay, that's what that is. That's what that is. Versus traditionally, you get some at the beginning and you can easily remember what it is. And then the next one comes, you remember what it is. Like it's a little bit of a different tasting experience. And it took us a long time to realize that was the nuance we were missing when we would do the tastes, because we're big believers. I'm a big believer in setting the right consumer expectation. And I think a lot of that's because, right, I ordered this bottle to my house a long time ago, and they set the wrong expectation for me, and I was disappointed.
Yeah.
And so for us, we do a lot of education, on our website, social media, but, with our bar and restaurant partners and retailers to really kind of say, this is what this product is, this is what it isn't, and here's how you use it, and here's where it kind of fits in your life. Yeah, that's a big piece of it.
So with cut above and a lot of NAs, are you using water as your base? Are you using glycerin? Like, what are you doing? What is the base of your product?
Yeah, it's water. It's water. Yeah, okay. So we're a water-based product. I realize, again, learning all this beverage chemistry, water is a terrible carrier of flavors, right? Ethanol is an amazing carrier of flavors.
Yeah.
And so for us, that was a real challenge in development, was how do we get that? It's a concentration of flavor that I think we're kind of talking about here.
Yeah,
and for us, and it's always my long-winded answer to why does a non-alcoholic bottle cost so much?
Yeah,
it's water. And so because water is a poor carrier, we have to sometimes use 2 to 3 times the amount of those natural ingredients to get the concentration so that it holds up in a drink.
Yeah.
And so that translates to sometimes 2 to 3 times more cost.
Yeah.
So being water-based just means we had to make sure we got our concentrations of flavor right. And then we use xanthan gum, which is a really natural way to give it that viscosity. Glycerin, we noticed, would kind of ball up and clump up and didn't hold well when you got to especially really cold cocktails.
Yeah.
And so for us, it was the best way. And each one has a different amount of it because all the spirits have different mouthfeels. And it, again, was all part of that. We've got to deliver on the drink. Got to deliver for the drink. And this has to, what we have is always in service of the good cocktail.
Yeah. Awesome. So it's double the ingredients, mostly water-based. You're using xanthan gum, not really any glycerin in there. Are you having, so with your extracts and your other stuff, or is there anything oil-based since you're using mostly water?
Yeah.
It's not going to mix, right?
Yeah,
so
there is.
Have you had any challenges with that? I'm more curious because, again, your first NA have had to sit down with us. So
Yeah, for sure. They're so some of them are oil based, like juniper in the gin is oil based extract, and we all know oil and water don't mix, and so we had to figure out how do we get them to stay together, not fall apart when they're being shaken and chilled and all the things we do to make a good cocktail.
Yeah,
and so for us, there's a very small amount, doesn't even register on the nutrition label, of sugar.
Okay.
And so we found that sugar can do this job of grabbing onto both and hanging onto it, mixed with the xanthan gum. And then we have a proprietary way that we blend everything.
Okay.
That kind of treats it in different stages, different ways, that ensures once it hits the bottle, it's stable.
Yeah.
So it was getting the right amounts of those flavors, right? The right water. So it's a highly filtered pH specific water that we use. Bringing in things that give it the mouthfeel, and then combining them in the right way, in the right order, which is, I would say, is everyone, we list what the flavors are in our bottle. Most brands do now for transparency. The real secret to the sauce is how you blend them together, because that's going to create the stability or it's not.
Yeah, it's basically just like making a vinaigrette or mayonnaise, right? Like you have your water, your vinegar, whatever other ingredients you're doing in there, and then your egg is your binding agent or mayo or whatever you're throwing in there.
That's right. You have to have something that does that. Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense. Cool. So we talked about this and that. Let's. What cocktails are you kind of hyped about using this in? What have you seen a lot of people use?
Oh, so it follows foolproof cocktails in terms of like popularity. So right now, the margarita and riffs on margaritas warming up outside, those always dominate during summertime. I've been really into seeing when people do infusions into our expressions. Sometimes that's really creative, and it's like a mushroom into our whiskey that was done one time, and I was like, oh, that is, it made an amazing riff on an old fashioned that was done before. I really like the bitter cocktails at the moment. And so, the challenge on the non-alcoholic side, if you're a bartender or bar owner, is if you kind of look at your really amazing, 5-ingredient cocktails, is finding a non-alcoholic version of all of those. And so for us, we have brands that we like and partner with. But really, if the ingredient doesn't exist, can we infuse something, using, whether it's a cucumber in the gin to bring something, or butterfly pea to give color. We use lavender a lot with the gin to kind of bring in some more botanical and floral notes. Yeah. So seeing cocktails created with those infusions, I think, helps make up for some of those other ingredients not having non-alcoholic counterparts yet. Yeah. And so that's really what I like seeing these days.
Awesome. Well, Clint, taking a few steps back, because there's a question I want to ask you. So you talked about nutrition label. So what are the specific regulations that you have to go through? Because I know alcohol has their specifics. Yeah. What does the NA category have as far? Because you probably have to do FDA stuff, right? Still,
we do. We have to submit our nutrition labels. So the definition for non-alcoholic is less than 0.05% ABV or alcohol by volume. And so anything less than that can say it's non-alcoholic. And so there are brands that are right up to that and just don't cross it over. So they do have alcohol in them. And then there's scales all the way down. I would say nothing is ever 0.000000, like all the way, complete, absolute zero. Orange juice, if you do the same test they do on us, orange juice is going to register as having alcohol in it. Like I say, Código has as much alcohol in it as a ripe banana. And so it's, for us in human consumption, that's nothing. That's zero. Yeah. And so it was one of those things when we had hit the market, okay, do we say we're zero proof? Do we say we're non-alcoholic? Everything that, again, we put into here isn't creating alcohol. No, alcohol's not added or created at any time during the process. So we are zero proof. But again, if you measure far enough down on the decimal places, any beverage is going to, other than pure water from a spring, is going to have
some kind of
sugar.
Yeah, that makes sense too, because a lot of extracts and tinctures have to go through some kind of alcoholic or solvent. Solvency.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Cool. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the NA category as a whole, like what we're seeing in the market right now. So you've traveled a lot. You've seen a lot of things. What is trending right now in your aspect of things?
Yeah, I think right now what's trending in terms of products, we see a lot of taking the non-alcoholic cocktails and making them portable. So we see a lot of movement in the market towards canned non-alcoholic. So it's a space, again, we don't play in. We're in the spirits for making drinks. Functional, so your THC cannabis beverages are growing in markets, but have risks tied to them in terms of approvals and regulation. And then we see the expectation really driven by the consumer, which is, I go out to a bar or restaurant, I now have the expectation there's going to be a non-alcoholic cocktail section, not a drink. There's going to be, you've got 12 cocktails, I want to see 3 non-alcoholic. And I want to see them. I have the expectation that they are as complex and creative, and it's a funny name cocktail place, that they've got the funny names, just like everything that's foolproof. That I think will continue. One thing we started to pick up on late last year that we're seeing this year is the categories matured enough where there's starting to be brand preference. And so consumers will have tried either at home or out different non-alcoholic spirit brands. Know ones they don't like, ones that they do like. And when they see a cocktail on the menu, they may be happy that they've got the 3 there. If they're made with products that they know there's better stuff out there, they may not order it anymore. And so that's a lot of where we come in as that second waiver brand, which is to say, okay, hey, you can now make cocktails with cut above that are going to be the better tasting ones, that are going to perform better and hold up for the consumer. And again, meet their expectation, because it definitely has changed. It used to be, thank God there's a non-alcoholic cocktail. Now it's no, it better be good, and it better be using the best stuff you can find as, the proprietor you find, in their area.
Yeah, for sure. And the market demographic, is it still like younger individuals? Is still like everybody keeps using Gen Z? Or not drinking as much.
I say Gen Z gets a lot of credit and blame or whatever when you talk about the NA space. And I'm of the camp that thinks it's a little bit over attributed to Gen Z. So we see, if you look at who buys cut above, right, it's a bell curve, a traditional bell curve. And so you definitely have Gen Z playing a part. But Gen Z, if you think about, they didn't grow up drinking, they don't have an appreciation for cocktail culture. And so for them, there's not necessarily as much value. It's more, I value the experience of being in a place. So yeah, the drinks are a part of it, but unlike Andrew, who really appreciated the drink making out of college, it's less about that. It's about the whole ambiance, and can I take a good photo to share or video? So they place a little more importance on that. We see a lot of people kind of where I was at and where I still am in terms of, I've got responsibilities. I still want to be out. I'm going to, Zebra Stripe, have one foolproof, one non-alcoholic. I'm going to do what I want in any given night. And then we see people who are, 50 plus, and a lot of what we hear there is it's, longevity, quality of life. My doctor told me, I'm done with it. I really don't want to have another hangover the rest of my life. I'm good. I had my fun with it. And so every generation, I think, has their motivation and reason. Every person then has a personal reason for it. But then there's also new data that says, Gen Z actually does drink as much as others. They did it in that period. But they are also now much more price sensitive. And again, if they're going to consume alcohol, they want it to be for a special occasion. They want it to be memorable. It's less about just, going out and having a bunch to drink.
For sure. And I think I'm kind of the same thing as like everybody. Gen Z is always the scapegoat. But I think the trends that we're seeing now is just generally people are not drinking as much. And with the current state of everything, is people are not going out as much either. So it's kind of the trend.
Yeah, and
Right.
I think most consumers of non-alcoholic spirits and most consumers of cut above also consume alcohol.
Yeah.
And so I think the bottle of the traditional spirit they had on their bar cart now is just staying on there a little bit longer because they're bringing in non-alcoholic cocktails into their consumption patterns. And so I would say I think the mistake a lot of the earlier brands did was position themselves against alcohol. And we never wanted to do that because we're not against alcohol. It's been part of the human experience since humans have thinking about their experiences,
Yeah.
and it's going to continue to be, I believe. Um, we thought if we came at it and had that mindset, and people were almost like, well, bars aren't a good thing. I was like, well, no, like you're selling a non-alcoholic product in a cocktail. Cocktails are drinking in bars. Like, how can you not see bars and value them as a brand? And so a lot of those things, we just didn't vibe with, me personally, and then didn't want the brand to be about those. And so it's Cut Above is the non-alcoholic spirit that came out and said, you don't have to completely get rid of something you loved if that's not what you want. You can bring us in and mix the two together. You can use us sometimes, use them sometimes. Kind of this very much, someone said, like, you've got kind of this like hippie mindset where everything's cool. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of, that is what I want. Like, I want everyone to feel cool and welcome. And my long-term vision I have is that we don't talk about non-alcoholic, like we don't talk about vegetarianism being it's not really a topic anymore, right? It's became just part of what we are, and no one's batting an eye if someone's ordering non-alc or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about that. So let's talk a little bit more about bartending and bartenders. So what are some of the pushbacks that you've seen? Like, let's have like a real talk. What are some of the pushbacks with the NA cocktails that you've seen, feedback you've gotten from bartenders?
Yeah. So it's I've heard all of it.
Yeah.
I've heard all of it.
Yeah.
So I would say the most popular one is either I don't need it or my guests don't want it. I think guests don't want it is definitely always wrong, because that's been proven wrong. All the data, we wouldn't exist and grow as a category if that was the case. Your guests do want it. They just maybe don't feel comfortable because they don't want to ask you to make something special. That maybe they perceive that as being a hassle for you, so they're going to order. And if you don't have NA, they're going to do whatever they water, tea, soda. So those customers are there in the places. The don't need it part, I say there are probably, out of all the cocktail bars, maybe 5% that don't need it because they have mixologists who are creative enough who can take a lot of what NA spirits bring and they can do really cool things and not have to have a spirit analog in there.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And just like every spirit bottle doesn't belong in every single bar, same thing with non-alcoholic. And again, it's weird I say that. People are like, what? Like, you're just, squatting down on the category and like putting it down. But no, it's the truth. It's what Spirit's done, and we're in that model, right? Just very, very early on. Behind that, we get right to the tasting part of it, and that's where that education is. And so they again either had brands tell them before, or they experienced and set this expectation that when they taste a non-alcoholic tequila, it's going to be exactly like a foolproof tequila, and that's not the case. And I spent our first 6 months when we started marketing, we said, 1 for 1, you're not going to tell a difference. I realized really quick, like, that's wrong. Like, because you are going to, I taste the difference. And I don't want us to say that to get a sale. What I want to say is that this brings all the flavors you find in tequilas that I know and love. And it does the job of those in a cocktail without the alcohol.
Yeah.
And that's it, full stop. And so it has to, I'm a big believer that we are a category of ourselves. So I believe of a non-alcoholic tequilas, we make one of the best. We're, one of the most awarded. But making it in the style of tequila to make tequila cocktails did the job of making it approachable. And so someone always says, okay, well, if you were about, all these things, you didn't have to make a non-alcoholic whiskey. You could have just called it, smoky oak beverage.
Yeah.
And I could have, but then I've got to explain what that is to the consumer. And in that explanation, I'm probably going to say it's like a whiskey.
Yeah.
And so let me just call it a non-alcoholic whiskey, or a whiskey alternative.
Yeah.
Because it makes it approachable and it makes them kind of understand, okay, this is how it's going to taste. And then we always say, and particularly with the whiskey people, of which I'm one of them, like we are very particular. I always say, right, the thing I mentioned earlier about the flavors, And then I say, and you're not going to have that big ethanol bite to sort of fight through. So go into this old fashioned, knowing those are going to be two things. Flavor's going to come first. You're not going to have that bite of ethanol.
Yeah.
And then let's get the feedback. Because then it's more about flavor preference.
Yeah.
And just like not every bottle of gin is palatable and desirable for every person. That's why we got a massive gin aisle and a massive tequila aisle at our liquor stores. It's going to be the same thing for non-alc. And so I always, when I'm doing a lot of these kind of small retailer education sessions, I would say you should be able to talk about that above, whiskey profile versus another brand's whiskey profile, because they're all different.
Yeah.
And there are some that are bad. I will say that. But some of the ones that are good, of which were there, they're just different flavor profiles, and that's cool. Like good. Find yours and go for it. You're taking care of yourself in your way. And so for us, educating the bartender on that when we're doing those tastings, and then the third part we get is that it's gonna eat into alcohol sales, and we don't really see that much anymore because it's been disproven. When you add non-alcoholic to the menu, you get a revenue lift that we find starts at about 15%. So it's meaningful. Yeah. Because you're making better margin on a beverage, and the consumer's happy too.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of tipping back a little bit to that first point, I think if a bartender is telling you that the guest doesn't want it, they don't truly know their guests.
Yeah.
Right. Because we are hospitality first. And I feel like there are still a lot of bartenders that have like, oh, I'm going to always be right and the guest is always getting wrong. And that's just not how it should be working. So,
yeah. And I always pick up a little bit to most and I don't want to quantify how many bartenders.
Yeah,
I've met bartenders who don't appear like they don't know how to use an ingredient. And they've been used to using all these other foolproof ingredients forever. And when they get this new thing, it's like, well, I don't want to work with it. But it's always this, was it that you don't want to learn how to work with it? Like you learned how to work with mezcals, and mezcals weren't on the market, 15 years ago. And so is it more about you not wanting to learn how to make a delicious beverage, for this consumer who's already there in your place? We can help with that, right? We've got cocktail recipes we developed that, bartenders develop for us. Yeah. And so we can help them get there. But if just like selling anything, you've got to kind of get past egos sometimes.
Yeah.
And so that appears every now and then.
Yeah, for sure. Egos definitely, it's a big thing in the industry, but it's all industries really.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
That's right.
Cool. So kind of wrapping up here.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on.
Of course. No, I'm happy to be here.
Sure.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Is there anything new coming down the pipeline for Cut Above? Anything that?
Yeah. So we right now we're in the process of launching as part of Princess Cruise Line's non-alcoholic cocktail program, which I think is really, really
Congratulations.
cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So we hear that from a lot of consumers, which is I know my at-home bars, I can go find my good non-alcoholic cocktails, but when I travel, then they're gone all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so we see travel hospitality coming online, and so we're part of what Princess Cruise is doing, and we're really happy with that. We've got a couple of products in ideation phase, nothing we're actively working on, but we do still see some gaps in the market that we think we can address and close. That's probably a couple of years from now. Yeah. And other than that, we just continue to grow, and a lot of it is it's conversations, and it's talking about what we're about and why we're different than other brands on the market, and the care that we put into the product and the care that we put into the relationships that we build with our customers.
Yep.
I'm one of the few NA brands that they call when they call Cut Above, it's my cell phone that rings.
Yeah.
If a bottle got broken, I'm the one changing the invoice to adjust for it. And so when someone deals with Cut Above, they deal with the founder, they deal with me. And I like that. I'm proud of that. It's who we are. And so for us, it's just continuing on that path, right? Reaching the good word, if you will.
Yeah.
Growing the brand and giving people, again, what they want and just giving them the best of it.
Yeah, for sure. Where can people get more information from you?
Yeah, so more information, Cut Above is at drinkcutabove.com. Mm-hmm. It's our social handle as well. Cocktail recipes, the story we talked about today, how to use it, all that kind of fun stuff is there. And then we have some videos up on our YouTube, which is Drink Cut Above as well, that go a little bit more into crafting cocktails, the differences between using non-alc versus traditional spirits. But yeah, start at drinkcutabove.com.
Perfect. And where can people follow you at? If they have any questions?
At Drink Cut Above. Instagram is our most active channel.
Perfect. So Drink Cut Above. Everything's on the website. Any other last point you want to make? Do you have any quote of the day? Or any advice you want to give to someone?
No, quote of the day is just everybody take care of yourselves in whatever form that looks like. And so, we want to be there when taking care of yourself means having a no or low proof cocktail. That's where we want to meet you. And other than that, just be kind to each other.
Be kind.
Yeah.
Key point. Awesome. Well, thank you, Andrew.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of Cocktail Classified, and we will see you next week.